Both wanted peace, both committed genocide to achieve it, and both died at the hands of the people they loved most. Lelouch of Britannia chose to become the world's enemy. He united humanity through hatred, and then he sacrificed himself, dying as history's greatest villain so the world could finally know peace. Eren Yeager chose a different path. He unleashed the rumbling. He erased 80% of humanity, and he forced his friends to become heroes by killing him. One chose sacrifice, the other chose tyranny. One killed strategically, the other killed indiscriminately. One achieved peace, the other, we're not so sure. So here's the question that's divided anime fans for years. Who was right? This isn't a who would win in a fight video. This isn't power scaling. This is something far more interesting and far more uncomfortable. This is a philosophical deathmatch between two of anime's most controversial protagonists. Both Lelouch and Eren stand accused of the same crime, using genocide as a tool for peace. Both claim noble intentions. Both argue their methods, however horrific, were necessary, and both die, believing they secured a better future. But their philosophies are fundamentally opposed. Lelouch represents calculated sacrifice, the belief that evil can be controlled, that the suffering of the few can justify peace for the many, strategic evil for strategic good. Eren represents forced freedom, a world where choice is an illusion, where survival matters more than morality, the right of his people to exist, regardless of the cost to everyone else. And here's what makes this debate so explosive. Both sides have arguments that make sense. In this video, we'll present the strongest case for each of them. We'll examine their methods, their body counts, their justifications, and most importantly, whether their philosophies actually worked. By the end, you'll have to decide. If you had to choose one method to save your people, which would it be? Because that's the uncomfortable truth both stories force us to confront. Sometimes there are no good options, only impossible choices. Let's start with Lelouch v Britannia and the Zero Requiem, one of the most brilliant and most horrifying plans in anime history. Here's the situation: Lelouch has defeated his father. The Britannian Empire is his. And yet, the world is still on fire. Wars rage everywhere. Hatred runs deep. The cycle of violence shows no sign of stopping. Lelouch could rule as emperor. He has the power. He has Gias, the ability to command absolute obedience. He could force peace through control, but he doesn't. Instead, he creates the Zero Requiem.
And that, yes, is the Zero Requiem.
A plan where he becomes the ultimate tyrant, unites the entire world in hatred against himself, and then dies publicly, killed by Zero, Suzaku in disguise, taking all the world's hatred to the grave with him. Just pause for a moment and think about the genius and the horror of that decision. Lelouch doesn't just play the villain, he becomes one. He conquers nations, threatens global annihilation, positions himself as the singular source of all the world's suffering, and he does this knowing he can never explain himself. History will remember him as a monster. His sister, Nunnally, the person he loves most, will hate him. His friends will despise him. He gives up everything, his reputation, his legacy, his life, all for a plan that only works if everyone truly believes he's evil. And this is where the psychological brilliance comes in. Humans are tribal. We fight over race, nationality, ideology. But Lelouch gives the world something everyone can agree on. He is the enemy. Suddenly, it doesn't matter if you're Britannian or Japanese, from the Chinese Federation or Europe, everyone has a common foe. And when that foe dies, the hatred dies with him. When Zero kills Lelouch in front of the entire world, several things happen at once. The tyrant is dead. The threat is gone. Zero is reborn as a hero, a symbol of justice. The world can move forward, not united by force, but by shared relief. And only a handful of people carry the truth of what Lelouch really did. Lelouch doesn't get to be remembered as a hero. That's the sacrifice. From a utilitarian perspective, the greatest good for the greatest number, the Zero Requiem is almost flawless. The death toll, relatively low compared to what could have been. Lelouch kills strategically throughout the series. but the Zero Requiem itself is almost bloodless. Maximum impact, minimal additional death. The outcome, the world unites. Wars end. Reconstruction begins. Nunnally, as Empress, leads Britannia toward genuine peace. As Callan says in the epilogue, the world moves past war and focuses on hunger, poverty, and cooperation. The plan worked. LELOUCH succeeded. And here's what truly separates LELOUCH from most ends justify the means protagonists. He doesn't just sacrifice others, he sacrifices himself. He never gets to see the peace he created. He never gets redemption. He never gets to explain himself to Nunnally. Suzaku, the man who wanted to die for his sins, is forced to live, trapped forever behind the mask of Zero, giving up his own identity for the sake of the world. This isn't a power fantasy. This is tragedy as strategy. LELOUCH becomes the villain not because he wants to, but because someone has to be the scapegoat, and he's the only one who can pull it off. The only ones who should kill are those prepared to be killed. LELOUCH lives by that belief, and he dies by it. So if we're ranking genocidal plans, and yes, that sentence is as uncomfortable as it sounds, here's why the Zero Requiem stands above most. First, minimal collateral damage. Second, genuine peace is achieved. Third, self-imposed punishment. LELOUCH engineers his own execution and accepts death as the price for his sins. Fourth, he protects those he loves. Nunnally gets her peaceful world. His allies are spared the burden of being associated with his crimes. And finally, strategic brilliance. This is a plan only LELOUCH could execute. It demands intelligence, manipulation, sacrifice, and perfect timing. And somehow, it works. So here's the real question. If you had to choose between endless war and becoming history's greatest villain to create peace, would you do it? Would you let the world hate you so the people you love could live better lives? LELOUCH's answer was yes, and he proved it. Now let's turn to Eren Yeager and The Rumbling, one of the most devastating and most controversial acts in modern anime. Here's the situation. Eren has seen the future. He knows the world will never accept Eldians. He knows Paradis will be destroyed. He knows his friends will die. And most importantly, he believes the cycle of hatred cannot be broken through diplomacy. He has other options. Zeke's euthanasia plan, a partial rumbling to eliminate military forces. Slow, fragile attempts at peace. He rejects all of them. Instead, Eren activates the rumbling. Millions of colossal titans march. 80% of humanity is erased. This isn't strategy, this is annihilation. The Attack on Titan fandom is divided on Eren's motivations, because Eren himself is divided. The story presents multiple, often contradictory reasons. First, protecting his friends. I wanted you to live long, happy lives. Eren claims he did this so Mikasa, Armin, and the others could stop him, become heroes, and secure Paradis' future. Second, determinism, fate. I saw the future, I couldn't change it. Eren insists he was a slave to destiny. The Attack Titan showed him what would happen, and deviation was impossible. Third, personal desire. I wanted to. In the final chapter, Eren admits something disturbing. Part of him wanted the world flattened, wanted absolute freedom. I did it for me. Fourth, leveling the playing field. By killing 80% of humanity, the outside world's population is reduced to something closer to Paradis. Forced equality, achieved through mass death. Let's examine this. Eren's defenders focus on one argument above all else. Everything he did was to save the people he loved. The world wanted Eldians erased. Paradis was outgunned, outnumbered, and hated. Diplomacy failed. A partial rumbling would only delay the inevitable. So Eren forced a scenario where his friends had no choice but to kill him, and in doing so, become the heroes who saved humanity. In theory, this works. The world owes Paradis. Armin and the others become ambassadors. For a time, peace holds, but it doesn't last. The epilogue shows the truth. Roughly a century after Eren's death, war returns. Paradis is reduced to ruins. If Eren's goal was lasting peace for his people, he failed. This is where the philosophy becomes messy. Eren calls himself a slave to freedom. He claims future memories trapped him in a fixed outcome, that no matter what he tried, the result would be the same. If that's true, some argue, then moral responsibility collapses. You can't blame someone for actions they were incapable of avoiding. But here's the problem. In his final conversation with Armin, Eren admits something else entirely. I'm just an idiot who got his hands on power. Desire mattered. Choice mattered. So which is it? Was Eren a prisoner of fate, or did he choose this path? The story never gives a definitive answer, and that ambiguity is intentional. It forces us to confront a harder question. Does why he did it matter when the result is 80% of humanity dead? This is the most honest and most damning moment in Attack on Titan's ending. Armin asks Eren why. Why the rumbling? Why so much death? And Eren breaks. I don't know, I just wanted to. He wanted the world from Armin's book, an empty earth, a world without humans, a place where no one could oppress anyone because no one else existed. This isn't noble, it isn't strategic, it's destructive desire. Eren wanted to erase the world the way a child kicks over a sandcastle, not because it achieved something meaningful, but because he could. And that's terrifying. If we judge Eren by the same standards we use for LELOUCH, this is where he collapses. First, massive collateral damage. 80% of humanity, billions dead, indiscriminate slaughter. Second, peace not achieved. The cycle continues. Eren buys time, but not a future. Third, no true sacrifice. Eren doesn't design his death as atonement. He stopped. There's a difference. Fourth, trauma inflicted on those he loved. Mikasa is forced to kill the person she loves. Armin lives, knowing his closest friend committed genocide. They never chose this burden. Fifth, moral incoherence. Was it fate? Protection? Personal desire? The story never reconciles these motives. But there is one argument in Eren's favor, and it carries real weight. The world gave him no choice. Paradis was going to be destroyed. Not maybe, not eventually, certainly. So Eren faced an impossible decision. Let his people die, or destroy the world, and he chose his people. The question isn't whether that choice was effective. The question is simpler and far more uncomfortable. Was it wrong? So let's put them next to each other, not emotionally, not ideologically, but practically. First, death toll. LELOUCH, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The series never gives an exact number, but his killings were strategic, targeted, and limited. Eren, 80% of the global population, billions dead. There's no philosophical spin that softens that difference. If we're counting bodies, LELOUCH loses less of humanity. Winner? LELOUCH, if winning is even a word that belongs here. Second, did it actually achieve peace? LELOUCH's world, after the Zero Requiem, stabilizes. Wars end. Nations cooperate. The focus shifts to rebuilding. Hunger, poverty, diplomacy. It's not utopia, but it works. Eren's world doesn't. After his death, there's peace. For a while, but roughly a century later, war returns. Paradis is destroyed. The cycle continues. If the goal was lasting peace, only one plan succeeded. Winner? LELOUCH. Third, sacrifice versus selfishness. LELOUCH designs his own death. He takes all the world's hatred onto himself. He dies knowing history will curse his name. That's the cost, and he pays it willingly. Eren also dies, but there's a difference. He doesn't orchestrate his death as atonement. He stopped, and before he dies, he admits something crucial. I did it for me. Desire played a role. That shifts everything. Winner, LELOUCH. Fourth, moral justification. LELOUCH operates on utilitarian ethics. The greatest good for the greatest number. He accepts that he's evil, but tries to make that evil useful. Eren's justification fractures. He claims it was for his friends, then fate, then freedom, then personal desire. These explanations coexist, but never reconcile. It's morally incoherent. Winner, LELOUCH. Fifth, strategic execution. The Zero Requiem requires precision, timing, manipulation, absolute trust in others. It's a plan that only works if everything goes right. And somehow, it does. The rumbling is brute force. Flatten the world. Hope fear solves the rest. No nuance, no contingency. Winner, LELOUCH. So by every measurable category, deaths, results, sacrifice, moral consistency, strategic intelligence, LELOUCH wins, on paper. But the story doesn't end there, because there's one factor that can't be measured by numbers alone. Context. The conditions they started with were never the same. But here's where the comparison gets uncomfortable. Because LELOUCH was fighting oppression, Eren was fighting extinction. LELOUCH's world was broken, but it was still a world where negotiation, rebellion, and political change were possible. Eren's world had already made its decision. Eldians were devils. Paradis was a mistake that needed to be erased. One world allowed reform, the other demanded annihilation. That difference matters, because morality changes under desperation. When survival isn't threatened, ethics are principles. When extinction is imminent, ethics become weapons. Lelouch gambled with the world's political structure. Eren gambled with his species' existence. Lelouch could afford to think long-term. Eren was out of time. That doesn't absolve him, but it changes how we judge him. It moves the question from was he evil to what would we have done? Because it's easy to condemn Eren from a peaceful chair in a safe country in a world where our people aren't facing extermination. It's much harder if the countdown is real, and that's why this debate has no clean answer. Lelouch represents controlled evil, precise, calculated, purposeful. Eren represents desperate evil, emotional, chaotic, existential. One is a surgeon, the other is a cornered animal. Both cause unimaginable death, but they come from different kinds of fear. Lelouch feared a broken world. Eren feared a world where his people had no future at all. And fear changes people, sometimes into heroes, sometimes into monsters, sometimes into both. And this difference is everything. Lelouch operates inside a moral system, a twisted one, a brutal one, but still a system. He believes in right and wrong. He just decides to carry the wrong himself so others don't have to. Eren operates at the collapse of morality. Not, this is wrong, but necessary. More like, morality itself stops mattering when survival is at stake. That's a terrifying philosophical line to cross, because once survival becomes the only rule, everything becomes permitted. Genocide, mass extinction, erasing civilizations that had nothing to do with your suffering. Lelouch says, the world can be saved if I shoulder the sin. Eren says, the world can burn if it threatens my people. One worldview tries to preserve humanity as a whole. The other prioritizes identity over universality, and history tells us something uncomfortable. The moment any group decides our survival matters more than everyone else's existence, the road ahead is always paved in blood. That doesn't make Eren unrealistic, it makes him disturbingly human, because in theory, we all believe in universal human rights. But in practice, if it was your mother, your child, your entire culture about to vanish, how many people would you be willing to sacrifice to stop it? That's the moral nightmare, Attack on Titan forces into the open. Not, is genocide bad? We know it is. But, would you still say that if you were the one facing extinction? Lelouch's story tests our logic, Eren's story tests our fear, and fear is a far more powerful motivator than logic has ever been. Lelouch represents hope in systems, Eren represents the collapse of systems. One says the world is broken but fixable. The other says the world is broken beyond saving. And which of those feels more realistic? Depends entirely on how much faith you still have in humanity. Next question is the hardest one of all. Did either of them actually work? So if we judge purely by outcomes, Lelouch wins. Fewer deaths, lasting peace, self-sacrifice, strategic precision, moral consistency. By every measurable standard, his method worked better. But here's the truth. Both stories force us to confront. Sometimes, the right choice doesn't exist. Lelouch had a path that could save the world. It cost him everything, but it was possible. Eren didn't have that luxury. His choices weren't peace or war. They were genocide or extinction. Does that justify the rumbling? No. But does it mean we can judge Eren the same way we judge Lelouch? Not so easily, because this debate was never really about them. It's about us. If you were Lelouch, brilliant, powerful, able to carry the world's hatred, would you sacrifice yourself to create peace? Maybe. But if you were Eren, cornered, desperate, watching the future where everyone you love dies, what would you do? Let them be erased to protect your morality, or burn the world to keep them alive? That's the question. Not who was right, but what would you choose when every option is wrong? And that's why this debate never ends. Lelouch v. Britannia, Eren Yeager, two protagonists who chose genocide, two philosophies, two outcomes. One became the villain to create peace. The other became the villain believing he had no choice. History will remember Lelouch as a monster, but the ones who knew the truth know he died a martyr. History will remember Eren? We're not even sure yet, because the cycle didn't end. If this video made you think, made you uncomfortable, or made you want to argue in the comments, good, that's the point. So tell me, Team Lelouch or Team Eren? And more importantly, why? What would you do if you were in their place? If you enjoy anime philosophy that asks hard questions and refuses to give easy answers, subscribe. And if you want to support videos like this, these take days of research, scripting, and analysis, you can support on Ko-Fi. Links in the pinned comment. You can even suggest topics. But support or not, thank you for watching and thank you for thinking. Until next time, remember, some choices don't have right answers, only impossible ones.